Welcome to the Lift Effect Podcast. I'm Eddy Moratin, your host, and I'm so delighted to share with you today one of the most important ingredients in successful community work. It's the idea of discovering the legacy of leadership in a neighborhood. It changes everything. Can't wait for you to hear the story. As we continue in the series Before Lift, it's been such an honor to really highlight individuals who have been part of the success of the community before Lift ever even showed up. And in very meaningful ways, the success of Lift is built on the shoulders of many, many residents like the ones that I'm getting to introduce to you through this podcast. And one of the people who first sort of raised their hand, stood up in front of their neighbors and said, it is time for us to come together and be about shaping a brighter future, whether we can know or trust what this Lift Orlando group is doing or not, but we have to come together with one voice, was a gentleman by the name of Raymer Kelly, someone who's, for all the years I've known him, has always been a truth speaker, someone who stands for the right reasons and makes sacrifices for the benefit of others, has become more than just a great voice of accountability, but a real brother and friend in this work. And I'm so excited that you'll get to hear his story. For us, he really demonstrates the great asset to be uncovered when you do this type of work. It's very easy to focus on deficits, to focus on what's lacking, to be really obsessed about the problems in a neighborhood instead of really being focused on the people. And the longer you get to know the actual people that live in the community, the more you begin to discover the great strengths that already exist there, that by investing in those voices, by coming alongside their leadership, incredible momentum can ensue. Early on in this work, we began to convene residents who lived around the area of Camping Road Stadium after having done door-to-door surveys and an asset mapping exercise to uncover what people wanted to see change in their community, what they loved about their community, and what they were willing to do about it. A few people exemplified the willingness to step up to that challenge, like Raymer Kelly. I've asked him to share a bit of his family story in the neighborhood and how he engaged in this work. And there are lessons there that I hope will be helpful and inspiring to you. I remember first talking to you in those early meetings, but really noticing how quickly you rose up to help facilitate that conversation in the group. And I want to transition to you, but I want to rewind the tape a little bit and get a little bit into your story and have you share a bit of your kind of early chapters. You come from a phenomenal family here in town. Your dad was one of the first Black police officers in the city of Orlando law enforcement, serving alongside Belvin Perry Sr. and those remarkable men that were part of those early officers. And you've seen so much in this community, and you're connected to so many families here because of that history. But tell me in your words what it was like growing up here, and what were those early examples of service that inspired you?
Yeah, for me, I think I'd have to say that it goes back to my parents. Their story started in 1924 and in 1931 when they were born, and they went through some different things living in rural Georgia, South Georgia, and central middle Georgia, as they call it. My mother was raised in a little town called Quitman, Georgia, which is in Brooks County near Valdosta. My father was born in a place called Vienna, Georgia. And that was in the middle, like around Macon and Perry and those things. And there were some rough times in the 30s and the 20s for them. But their story helps to frame how they raised me, right? So with Dad, and I'll quickly just kind of share that, he had a pretty hard life, right? And as a teenager, I understand at 16, he went to military. World War II was happening. He went to Camp Blanding here in Florida, and he served. And, he was honorably discharged when the war was concluded. And then he ultimately ended up moving to Central Florida, where he ended up working for the P. Phillips Corporation, where they pick fruit out in the orange groves, because there were a lot of orange groves here at the time. I have a picture of his father also working for Phillips in the 1900s. So he learned the value of hard work, but he had dropped out of junior high school or high school, maybe early high school, because he got tired of being the family that was always given the Thanksgiving basket because people felt sorry for them. He didn't want people to feel sorry for him. And so he dropped out. And he decided he was going to make something of himself anyway. So he went to Daytona Beach, to Bethune-Cookman, which at the time had a trade school, and he learned tailoring. And so he learned he could stitch a tuxedo from top to bottom, and you wouldn't know that it came from him. And so he worked at the Angebilt Hotel downtown as a tailor. And later he ran a taxi service. He had a taxi cab, as we called them back in the day, that he drove. And later he would go on to meet Belvin Perry and Lieutenant Richard A. Jones, Officer Belvin Perry, who recruited him to join the Orlando Police Department. They were already on the force, and it was in a different time. Black people couldn't vote then. Black officers couldn't carry guns. Black officers were not given cars. They had what we call billy clubs, these sticks that they walked the beats with on Paramore and Buck Alley and Division Street and all of these places. And but Dad became one of those guys. Somebody saw something in him, and I'm realizing now how young he was, because some of the things that my father did, who was First Officer Otha Kelly, and then he became Sergeant Otha Kelly. Some of the things he did, I look back and I realize he was only maybe 32 when he was the school liaison officer at schools that no longer exist, like Callahan Elementary, Holden Street Elementary School. I believe, Miss Bradley, you ran into him at Washington Shores Elementary School.
I did. I certainly did.
And people were so excited to see a Black police officer, because that was something they hadn't seen. We met our good friends, the Reeds, who lived on Spalding Road, which is right off of Goldwyn Avenue, right around where the Washington Shores Savings Bank is. It's called something different now. But their daughters were coming home from Washington Shores Elementary one day, and they brought this tall, to them, he was tall. He wasn't really that tall. But they brought this tall man home to Mr. and Mrs. Reed and said, "Mommy, you got to see what we found. We found a Black police officer." And so I hear those kinds of stories long after his death in 1986. But I mention him because his caring and concern for youth in the community. He ended up working in the youth section when he became a detective, and he worked with the schools forming what was then really the precursor to today's DARE program to help keep kids off drugs, keep them off the streets. He would literally spend time in the homes with the parents and the children when there were problems, not just arrest as a solution, but having a discussion with the parents to help them understand how important it was that you support little Johnny, whatever his name was, right? Because if you don't, I can tell you where he's going to end up, right? And, I was told a story by a certain pastor in the community who is pretty well known. He said, he got arrested once, and he said, and I have to tell you, your dad was a sergeant at the time, he said, and Sergeant Kelly came into the police precinct and saw me there getting written up, and he told the officer who was doing that, send him to my office. I'll take care of this from here. He said, "Do you know your father took me in the sergeant's office, closed the door and closed the blinds, took off his belt, and right there gave me the whooping of my life." He said, and I straightened up and, pulled in the sniffles. He said, and your dad put me in the back seat of the police car, and he took me home to my mom and dad and sat in the living room with us at dinner time and had a cup of coffee and told my parents what I had done and how he had intervened in it. And he said, "I want you to help him." Well, that person is now, I won't name him because I don't know if he'd want me to, but he is a pastor to this day. And maybe part of that is because somebody cared enough to intervene. My mother, on the other hand, Mrs. Alice Kelly, in her own right has her own story. And she came to Orlando through some tragedy. Her mom died when they were 15. Her and my aunt, her sister, Mary Jones Curtis at the time, who's now Mary Stoves, they came here together in the 40s and moved to Sanford because their father had gotten a job working on the railroad, which was at the time called the Seaboard Coastline. Later to become Amtrak. And somehow the worlds collided, and my mother met my father at a little diner downtown at the corner of Carter Street and Paramore. And I can't tell you the name of it. Mom would have known if she could have, if she was here. But they met, and this is where this kind of thing all began. And my mom was a little scared of him because she thought he was an old man trying to talk to her, and he offered her a ride home, and she sat way on the far end of the car seat. Because in those days, the car seats were bench seats.
Yes.
And she slid all the way over to the. He said, "Well, you're gonna fall out of the car if you get any further over there." But in 1951, they married, and they built their home in Lake Sunset in 1956.
Wow.
I lived in that home all of my days. But Mom also, as a teacher who worked in the school system for 50 years, 36 years as a classroom teacher, and the other 14 as a substitute, pouring into the lives of young people. She was a volunteer in the community at the Carter Street Pool. And, she led Girl Scouts with a lady named Mrs. Leela Ammons, who later became Leela Andrews. They did that together at Callahan Elementary School when it was a school. In 1970, integration happened, and I was in the womb. So I was part of the story. I just didn't know it yet. Mom, they pulled her out of the jar, out of the fishbowl, and she got assigned to go to Lake Weston Elementary School, which was over by Forest City Road. Meanwhile, I'm growing up, and by the time I turned 5, I walked into Orange Center Elementary School, where I was greeted by Kat Gordon, who was the guidance counselor at the school at the time. I don't know if it was Kat or if it was a lady by the name of Pat Ivy Brown.
Oh, I remember Miss Ivy.
Gave me my first hug at that school. One of them did. And then the other one was right behind them giving the other hug. And they walked me to the kindergarten classroom of Maddie Doughton, and the story began from there. But for me, the inspiration was being surrounded by people who cared. I was surrounded by educators. I was surrounded by leaders in education. I was surrounded by law enforcement, which helped make sure that I understood the rules of the road. And I just watched them. My whole street on Lake Sunset was filled with, I say, educators and leaders, because I had Mrs. Dora Anderson, who was the mother of Tracy Anderson. I had Mrs. Lassie Howard, who was a career school teacher, and her husband, Robert, who was a principal, in fact, at Carver before Mr. Bradley got there. And next door to me was Mrs. Ellie Simon, another career teacher. Henry C. Wright was principal at Jones High School for years, and his wife, Edithia, who was a librarian before they got called media specialists. Mr. Boston, Cecil Boston down the street, was principal at Jones High even prior to that. And, there were just a lot of people. And, I have to mention Mr. Sparrow, who, he wasn't an educator, but he was an educator. He was a teacher, right? He was a janitor in the school system. I believe he was at Washington Shores. And I call him a leader because in those days, which was some of the impetus behind making Pendana at West Lakes a mixed income community, there was a benefit from having people from all walks of life surrounding your children. If economics was not a barrier and you could have people from the janitor to the teacher, to the policeman, to the doctor, Dr. Scales, the dentist was on my street, right? I got poured into by all of those people and got a lot of perspectives. It kept me humble and did not allow me to, think that if I ever got success that I'd be better than somebody else, because there was something to learn from all of those people. Those were the mentors who helped me. And under Mayor Bill Frederick, I signed on to this program called the Mayor's Youth Employment Program. And I was an ambassador for the program, and I went and got my first job at Martin Marietta.
Wow.
As you talked about. And they hired me back a second summer. I got my third job through the program at AT&T out in Maitland. And that role would later lead to my first permanent job when I finished school at Florida A&M University's School of Business and Industry. I got a job in finance in Maitland at AT&T. They called looking for me. I was about to take a job in Memphis. And the lady that I had worked with as an intern came back and she said, Mrs. Kelly, where is Raymer? He said, because we've got a job that's coming up. And I said, Memphis can wait.
Yes.
Because I had enough sense to know if you stay at home with mom's going to give you some breaks that the apartments in Memphis won't give you. So say all that, it started a storied career. I now have worked in corporate industry at, I think for a total of 30, this will be my 34th year now.
Wow.
I went on to work for AT&T out in Colorado and Comcast, worked for Pfizer for a number of years, worked for Amazon for about 5 years, managing customer experience programs around the services they provide. And now I work for VisionWorks, which is owned by VSP, the eye care insurance provider. So I manage business intelligence and some artificial intelligence programs. I kept going with school because of these educators. I went to Rollins to get my MBA. And after a few short years, I realized that no one cared anymore that I had an MBA. So I went back to school and got a master's of science in information technology. I said, I will not be the guy at the table who's doing CompuServe and Windows 95 and DOS 4. I'm going to keep up. A couple of years ago, I went back again to UC Berkeley and got a certificate done in artificial intelligence product development because you got to stay relevant.
Yeah,
right?
so true. So
You
true.
got to stay relevant. And what these folks taught us was that education was one of the keys. But there was also some other things they taught us too, that, kindness.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, what were if there was a moment or a specific example besides the role models your parents were that really triggered you getting involved in the neighborhood, that called you to service?
Well, I would say persistence is probably the thing that caused me to notice that I needed to get involved. And that was because you sent Eugene Leach down to my house, backed by his wife, Alice Leach. And
I was all them.
Eugene rang that doorbell enough times to make sure that I heard him. And he said, man, they got some things going on. You need to get involved. And I think they would want to hear from you. And I said, oh, they don't want to hear from me. I was a young man at the time trying to raise a growing family. I bought my first house and doing things, but he would not relent. And finally, I showed up at a meeting at Orange Center Elementary School, which felt very nostalgic. It was where I had met Kat and Felton Johnson, the principal, and I felt so big in the library there because the seats were still made for children, and it just took me back. And as you all were leading the community conversation and sort of facilitating, hey, community, what are the dreams that you have for what you think this area can be? What are the things that matter to you? How could someone help? That's when I kind of got the bug. You all were, Lift Orlando was a catalyst. I always like to say you were a catalyst. You dropped a chemical into the solution, and it started a reaction, and it bubbled and it grew, and then it kind of took a mind of its own. I ended up on the Economic Development Committee, and I also saw a link between access to technology, which was one of the other committees. I saw the two as inextricably linked.
Yes.
And so this group, we got together and we said, we're going to meet some more. We're going to come up with some things of our own around economic opportunity. So we formed the West Lakes Economic Opportunities Council.
After we named it.
Because we said, you know what? The community is full of lakes. There was Lake Lorna Doone. There was Clear Lake. There was Lake Sunset. There was Rock Lake. We were a community around some of the most beautiful lakes on the west side.
That's right.
So we decided we wanted to call ourselves Communities of West Lakes. And that's where that kind of got going.
That was 2014.
That was 2014. And so we decided we would start meeting on a regular basis, and we formed what later would become a 501c3. And the idea was to create an apparatus that would allow us to bring the communities together. The mentors for me in that day were the folks on that committee, right? Mrs. Bradley, Tangia Hill Smichael, who I had never met. And she'd been living on Lake Lorna Doone all these years. I didn't know her. I think my brothers and siblings might have known her. Tracy Anderson and Mrs. Bassa, who passed away.
Miss Bassa.
Just all of the ones. Jabril Ali was a part of the first group. He was there for Spring Lake Manor, and Faye joined us supporting in Lake Sunset. Like, we kind of began to grow, right? And later David Brewer got involved.
You started a newsletter?
We started a newsletter and, started getting the community to community. We started a Facebook apparatus. It was called West Lakes News.
Yes.
And so it was a place to have people talk. And we were trying to figure the balance between, keeping the West Lakes News positive and focused on good things, but also allowing people to express themselves and have a voice. Because that's what you all started at Lyft, at the initial meetings at Orange Center and at the Bowl, was you started people
Just thinking,
speaking and having a voice. And, you asked Ms. Bradley a little earlier about the things that were the challenges. Some of the challenge was overcoming the pains from our history here, right? So you go all the way back to Tinkerfield, and before Tinkerfield, the sense that the community has had that still exists, unfortunately, of betrayal, right?
Yes.
Over and over and over again, right? We got the Bowl placed here, which at that time was kind of seen as a negative because nobody else wanted it. College Park didn't want it. Winter Park didn't want it. So we'll just put it over there with Black folks, right? They cut 408 through the neighborhood and split us up and bifurcated us. And my mother at the time, her father lived on a street called Avondale Court that no longer exists. Her and my dad were married in that house. I believe it was 608 Avondale Court.
Wow.
There's a highway ramp where that house used to be now, John Young Parkway. Washington Shores fought like crazy. I will never forget Mr. Rufus Brooks and all of that crew were really, really fighting to keep this obtrusive traffic from coming through and just cutting us up again. So when we met with you all, we saw that there was an opportunity to leverage the Bowl and leverage what it could do, because it was, I always like to say, it was an economic gear, it was a wheel that spun off economic goodness, right? Whenever there's a Bowl, there's money being spent in the area. When there's money being spent in the area, people are benefiting. And we said, how can we harness the power of this, like electricity coming off of water turbines, right? How do we harness that and make it something that we can direct it to and channel it and focus it on some things that matter? I always like to say electricity is destructive if it's not controlled, harnessed, and focused, right? When you focus it, you can put it across power lines and you can light the hills across America, right? But lightning strike in your house can destroy it. Because it's not controlled.
That's right.
And so the idea was, how do we put together a set of gears, right? So we talk about, creating I had the privilege of being involved at UCF with the technology incubator. Could we create an incubator and give a place to still pour into young people, but teach them how to access capital? Teach them how to access mentorship so they can build their businesses. I'm also a serial entrepreneur too. While I've worked for all these companies 30 years plus, I can't stop. When my father retired from OPD in 1977, he started a real estate business with several of his friends and his brothers, and he began to buy apartments and land and all kinds of things going on, right? Entrepreneurship is a massive key. Can we spur a generation of entrepreneurs in this community? And I still have dreams of that.
Yes.
I'm very happy with some of the things that I'm no longer involved in Westlake's partnership. I'm very happy with some of the things that have been done, but I will tell you there is more.
Oh, so much more.
Because, the fixing the apartments on Orange Center was a big symbolic change that had to happen. Those apartments were the core of a lot of things. There were a lot of good people that came out of those apartments, but there were conditions that they just could not escape, not without some help, right? And so Pendana coming, which meant love one another in Swahili, Pendana opened up some opportunities for mixed income housing where some people paid market rates and some people had some subsidies, and you didn't know the difference. But the Mr. Sparrows and the Dr. Scales of the world and the teachers, the Alice Kellys of the world, all their children could all grow together and learn together. These were real things that interested me. And that's what really got me involved in it. I missed that work a lot. I needed to move on. My wife at the time developed breast cancer. She ultimately passed away. I had children in college, my daughters, who, they're doing well for themselves. My youngest one is still in school. I think she's like her dad. She's going to just keep going. She's almost done with a doctorate in psychology up at Fordham University in New York City. And now my eldest daughter just moved up there with us. She is a pharmacist who decided that, you know what, I'm 29. I still got time. I don't have a dog. I don't have a husband. I'm going to do something I want to do. She moved to New York with her sister. And she wants to do corporate pharmaceuticals type work like me when I worked for Pfizer. But I say all that to say that there is still an opportunity here. There are things in this community that are untapped. I call it untapped potential. We have only scratched the surface. And, Westlake's partnership is doing a great job with rehabbing some houses. What I want to rehab is the educational base for people to understand how money works, to understand what it takes to own a house, to understand how to get your funding, and to understand how real estate can be a part of your portfolio. And it can be, income is one thing, but wealth is another.
No, you're so right. I want to ask you both, and this is kind of a great way to sort of put a bow on some of your stories and your motivations and the things that have inspired you. Why? For the person listening to this, why serve? Why take time? Each of you had very busy careers, very busy family lives. And on top of that, you took time to volunteer, to serve in your neighborhood, to try to do good for others. If you had to describe why you did that, Ms. Bradley, you first.
I think I did it because I saw a need for unity. And our neighbors we didn't really know each other. The people on the lake knew each other because they started together. But I knew my next door neighbor, but I knew the neighbor, but on the other streets, I didn't know anybody. And my presidency, I would take the flyers around because I wanted them to know who I was and I wanted to know them. I was trying to get the unity together. And then the city of Orlando the police department, they started doing National Night Out. And because I had done the flyers to announce meetings, I said, I can take it to Miss Allen, I can take it to Miss Facer, I could call them by name. And that was the unity that I brought to the neighborhood. So when it was time for National Night Out, all wanted to participate. And I thank the police department for that. And then when the next president came about, I said, let's continue National Night Out. And so we did. And I'm going to have the fair in my yard the next time we have it, which will be our spring fling. So they're doing some things that because of Lyft, because of the city of Orlando, because of the police department, they had the feeling that we needed to unionize. And unity brings strength.
So true.
Yes.
What's your hope for the future, Ms. Bradley?
I hope for the future that people will come into Orlando and not just use the city of Orlando as a place for living, but a place of communicating with each other and building, like Raymer said, we're not going to ever be wealthy, but we can have a nice place to live. And not everybody understands how to live in a house. And Raymer said that. You've got to learn how to live in a house, and that you're not going to put your laundry on the front porch or on the fence, and that's important. So people need to be taught those things in order to keep a community beautiful and viable.
Oh, so well said. So well said. Raymer, why did you give so much of yourself to lift others?
Part of it was, I will say this, and this is Mrs. Bradley and I've had some of these conversations. I believe that we can be wealthy. I believe that if it's possible for others in other communities, why can't it be us? Right? It is possible. Now, there are those who don't want to do the work. They don't want to make the effort or whatever. That's your choice. But the opportunity is there if you're equipped with the right knowledge base and you've got the determination mindset and you've got some inspiration, because you need somebody to sometimes be that catalyst to spark that interest. And I would say why Serve To started also because of the deaths of the elders. For me, I was watching on my street on Lake Sunset where I drove down it the other day, and I realized that the old generations are gone.
Yeah.
And the things that they taught me personally, the memories that I have of each of them, like Mr. Anderson, who lived to be over 100 years old. I still remember my conversations with him sitting out by the lake as he was showing me how to fish and things like that. It was seeing that those people were gone and they were not here to continue to give the same kind of inspiration they gave to me to the next generation. So I said, well, honestly, I wasn't focused on this. I wasn't thinking about others in the moment. I was thinking about how to get ahead and take care of my family. But I realized that if people like me did not stand up, who had been passed that torch and given that knowledge and given all these tools and educational opportunities, if I didn't do it, what's going to happen, right? I thought maybe then we could pull in other people. I run the Orange Center Elementary School alumni group that is on Facebook, and we need to actually formalize that into 501 because we need to be supporting our schools. There's still opportunities to bring other people who have similar backgrounds to contribute and to do some things. But that's why the need is here. The potential is here. We have awesome young people in this community. What has been happening at Jones High School and Orange Center with the plans that are beginning to change that parents decided they wanted, right? And Lyft, again, being a catalyst there and now being directly involved in that. The potential is here. We need more people to serve who care.
One final encouragement from you to anyone listening, feeling challenged by your stories, inspired by your example to serve and give back in their own community. What is one thing you would want people to know about the legacy of serving in your community?
Well, as Raymer said, we'll never be rich, and he capitalized on the idea. But when I said wealth, I mean, you can be wealthy just from being able to express yourself.
Yes.
You can be wealthy in all kind of ways.
Health.
But health is a wealth.
Sure is.
It's a big theme here too.
Yeah. But that's why I said we'd never be wealthy. Money. I should have said money-wise. But if you challenge yourself to get up every day and not always cry about how I didn't get anything and nobody gave me this. And I was looking at a TV show last night, one of those on 67, BET. And then the young man said, I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to just sit on the steps and see who's going to come by and shoot somebody. That's not the kind of ideas that we need to bring to the table.
No.
And then the only way people are going to stop thinking about all those kinds of not doing anything, you can get up every morning and look at the sunset and look at the sun come out in the morning and say, I'm going to get up and clean the yard. I'm going to get up and go up there and help the man take down a tree or something. That's wealth that you have because you're healthy enough to know that somebody else needs your service.
That's so beautiful. That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's what I meant when I talked about.
Well, that's a great encouragement too.
Broader sense.
Yes.
Raymer, any final word of encouragement from you?
Just making one note for the record, I left off Mrs. Fannie Williams, who was one of those mentors.
Yes, indeed.
One of those original people that helped us to get our start. But I would say that, it's just know that anything is possible. When I look at, the children that grew up in the Orange Center Village and the Orange Manor apartments, we had some different backgrounds. My parents came from a lack of economic stability, right? But by the time I came along, they had a lot more. That mom had been a teacher for a number of years, but I think her first pay was only $2,500 a year. The house only cost $10,000, right? But it would take 30 years to pay that house off. And they paid it off in 30 years. In 1986, the year my father died, it was paid off. But by that time, I'm dealing with children who are my friends who were in a different kind of economic situation. They had parents working 2 and 3 jobs. They were home by themselves a lot. But out of that community came some business owners that are dynamic.
Yeah.
There's some entrepreneurs I could name. I know a person who leads some regional leadership at IKEA. She manages a lot of big things, and the potential is there. And you have to look beyond your current circumstance and really, really think about what's possible, and not just where you are. I dare to dream, and I think anything is possible. But I think there has to be a will, both in the person who wants to develop and in the community that surrounds them. I think community will is a big thing. We've got work to do to get aligned around really helping people make that move.
Raymer, Mrs. Bradley, I could not thank you enough. Your stories are a precious gift, and you shared that so generously today. But thank you also for the wisdom that God has given you and the way that you challenge us with your example, not just your story. Blessings to you both, and thank you for being part of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Raymer's dad would probably go to jail today if that story was happening in present time. But what a beautiful example of adults that realize that all the children in our community are our children, and we must care for them. We must protect their future. Raymer is a great example of that kind of leadership in the neighborhood that led from a collection of HOAs around the stadium to becoming a place known as the communities of West Lakes. And so much has followed since then. It's been a privilege to learn from him and to be able to work and walk alongside him in this work. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. I'm so happy that you're with us for this, and I hope that you've been able to take away some valuable lessons and reflections by listening to these stories. We would love your feedback, so please engage in the comments. Let us know what you think. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's the only way we'll be able to reach others with this. Thank you, and see you at the next episode. Bye.